go now to Dr. John Kennedy, a political science professor at Westchester University, joining us now via Skype. Dr. Kennedy, thanks for being with us tonight.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
We just heard Christy Aletto saying we may not know the results tonight, but there will be some key indicators across the country. Where will you be looking as this night unfolds that may be an indicator of how Pennsylvania may turn out in the end?
Sure. Well, as was mentioned earlier, Pennsylvania, of all the states, is the tipping point state in this election. And after the 2016 surprise, and when President Trump broke through the blue wall, winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, three states he hadn't won, or Republicans hadn't won in 7 cycles, you knew that this was going to be the starting point. So Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin were going to be at the starting point, but I mean, I like it too, but on the other hand, as was mentioned, there's these other states down throughout the Sun Belt that the president has to win. He has to run the table on each of those contests. And assuming Michigan and Wisconsin go for Joe Biden, which is expected, I think, at this point. I think of those three blue wall states, Pennsylvania is the most competitive. So I liken it to, using a football analogy, if there's a 50-yard line, Pennsylvania is right on the 50-yard line. And, Wisconsin and Michigan, they might be at the 48-yard line. Well, for the Republicans to get to Wisconsin and Michigan, or maybe Nevada or New Hampshire, they have to get through Pennsylvania first. So that's the first state there. And then on the other side of the 50-yard line are the Floridas, the Georgias, the Arizonas, the North Carolinas. And if Joe Biden get on that side of the 50-yard line in Pennsylvania, it really then becomes obviously not as important. But, if the field is as level as it can be, as we expect, Pennsylvania is the deciding state.
That's why so many people saw so many commercials for the presidential campaign over the past several weeks, right, Doctor? So discuss the effect as well. The effect this election night is going to have regarding redistricting at stake could be the redrawing of the map for years to come, certainly here in Pennsylvania.
I've been telling my students for the last 10 years, the 2010 election for the Republicans was the gift that kept on giving, because, Republicans across the country, after sweeping, the congressional elections in the 2010 midterms, which was President Obama's first midterm, they were set up to control and draw the maps, controlling the legislatures throughout many of the states across the country. And it really allowed the Republicans to gain over 1,000 legislative seats throughout that time. Now, the Democrats have pushed back over in 2018, but the election preceding the census and the redistricting process is always the most important election, because the legislature and Pennsylvania's legislature and a number of other legislatures are at stake. And so it is the state legislatures who draw these congressional maps. Pennsylvania will lose a seat following, in the 2000, going forward in 2022. So we'll be down to 17. But it is the legislature and ultimately the governor who signs the legislation, draws the map. So it is incredibly important and really will set the political agenda, the table for the next 10 years in U.S. politics.
So, Dr. Kennedy, the president has been insisting even today that we need to know the election results on November 3rd. We've got to know them today. But explain why that's never the case, especially with the Electoral College.
Of course, even in the modern era, that has never been the case. And certainly in a historical standpoint, you didn't have kind of, same day counting of ballots as you do today. And everyone, I think, who's old enough can remember the 2000 election, where we didn't know for weeks after the election to December who was declared, ultimately President Bush declared the winner. And we've had elections like that in Pennsylvania. You have to keep in mind, most elections aren't that close. So, if one candidate has a relatively large lead, even if it's a couple percentage points, and there might be 95% out, of the vote counted, there's probably not enough there to make a difference, and you can make a projection that someone is going to win. But if you have a very close election, well, that 5% or 4%, you could be looking at 100,000 votes. So it is a significant number, and we've had elections in Pennsylvania statewide. Certainly, attorney general races, several years ago that went into days later. I mean, what's unusual this year for Pennsylvania, I think, is the confluence of forces, of course, and the environment we're in. But it's the first year we went to this all mail-in voting, which the legislature passed last spring. Not all mail-in, but mail by without an excuse. And so that's caused quite a bit of uncertainty. But I liken it to this: if you're standing in line, to vote in person, and you arrive at 7:45, and the polls close at 8, and you're still in line because there's maybe 50 people in front of you. The supervisors at the ballot box, they don't come out and say, "Oh, you have to go home now." No, you're in line. And I liken that's the analogy I use as far as voting by mail. If your ballot is postmarked by November 3rd, it's a perfectly valid vote. And certainly the disruptions and the concerns as far as the United States Postal Service it comes into play as well. But we might have a determination tonight. We probably won't have it as far as Pennsylvania is concerned. If Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, is that 50, that key state. But again, we'll know Florida, we'll know North Carolina, we'll know Georgia. I mean, again, unless it's razor thin and you're going down to the 98th and 99% of the vote. But if it's, if it's within 2-3 points, we'll know by 11 o'clock tonight. If Joe Biden wins one of those states, if the election is effectively over.
Dr. John Kennedy from Westchester University. We could ask questions all night.
Really?
Yeah, hang tight. We might come back to you a little bit later, but we're going to move on for the moment. Thank you.